Hey, everybody, this is Kenny. Welcome back to the Leading from the Middle podcast. This is the podcast for middle managers who want to develop themselves, develop their teams, and improve their results. I got to speak to the co founder of Proxi, Chelsey Roney, today. Chelsey gave us so many great hints and tips on what it's like to be an entrepreneur. What do you leave behind in the corporate world? What do you take with you? How do you really build a great team, and what are some social media trends that'll be happening in 2023? You don't want to miss a second of this. There's so much more that she talked about. Let's get at it. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Leading from the Middle podcast. This is Kenny, and I have just an enormously positive, fantastic special guest with me here today. I'm going to get right to her, and we're going to get into a bunch of different topics having to do with leadership and just a variety of topics. I'm so blessed to have her with me this morning. The co-founder at Proxi, Chelsey Roney, is with me today. Chelsey, how are you?
Oh, doing so good. It's a sunny day here in Seattle, so I have to enjoy it.
Is that unusual? I always say that that's unusual.
In the winter, that's
okay.
Definitely the case. And the winter lasts for a long time. So I'm just sitting by a window trying to soak it in.
That is fantastic. I want to give you first plenty of time and space to really talk about your journey and your background and what led you to start Proxi. So walk us through. You can go back as far as you want to go or as short as you want to go.
Oh, gosh.
Your background is just phenomenal. And I want to pick apart, some of it after you tell us. But walk us through your background and what's led you to this point in your career.
Yeah. So, I'll go all the way back. So senior year in college, I was part of actually a sorority, and we were doing sorority recruitment. And for anyone who's been through that process, you know that when you bring in new members to your organization, it just takes a lot of administrative work on the back end. And so during my senior year in college, I've always been very entrepreneurial. I had several tiny businesses before that where I made, money on my own. But I saw this gap, this problem that all of this administrative work needed to happen to bring in new members to our organization. And so I actually built a tool, a technology that simplified all of these administrative tasks and took them from being on paper to being on the internet. And then we grew and grew and grew. And over the next 7 years, we became the leading provider in the marketplace for this solution. We were first to market, but then luckily we maintained that lead. And we ended up working with more than half of the universities in the country to provide this solution.
Wow.
And but meanwhile, well, let me pause. Whenever you have like a SaaS company and it's the product is, the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, there's sometimes, if you're in a really niche space, there's not a lot more to do with it. So we were able to run this on the side. So meanwhile, I was working at Boeing in financial planning and analysis right after university. And that was just a fantastic experience. I actually happened to report, all my managers up through the top were women at that point. And it just felt good for me to like leave college, enter this workspace that I felt welcomed in, that I felt like people were rooting for me, but also giving me challenging experiences. From Boeing, I actually went and got my MBA from University of Washington and then transitioned to marketing at Microsoft. Another fantastic experience. It was I was just marketing in a demand gen center, just really high volume of marketing projects going out the door. And meanwhile, I sold the first company, and I knew that I loved building businesses. That was my passion. And I used that money to purchase a local services business that I thought a manager could run. I was wrong. I needed to be there to run it. So long story short, I ended up leaving Microsoft and running this business.
Hmm.
and grew it to be about 10 times its size. Now, while I was running this business, I had a girlfriend, Melinda, who's my co-founder for Proxi, my current company. We'd been friends since undergrad at Texas A&M, and she moved up to the Seattle area to work on her PhD in human-centered design. Before that, she was working in geospatial for one of the U.S. intelligence agencies. And Halloween 2020 rolled around, and if you'll unfortunately remember, that was the first Halloween with COVID, and so people were really nervous about giving their children a safe trick-or-treating experience.
Yes.
Well, in Melinda's neighborhood Facebook group, a parent had written, like, if you are providing distance candy delivery, then write your address in the comments, and hundreds of addresses were added. But given her background in geospatial and her new background in human-centered design, she was like, look, this doesn't make sense. How are you really going to navigate this list of addresses on Halloween night as a parent? Like, what are you going to do? Type in the first, go there, but then you type in the second address, but the third address is closer to the first than the second. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And
Yeah.
so she designed a solution with existing tools in the marketplace to put together a map that visualized all these points so that whenever people were trick-or-treating, they knew what was closest, they could make an efficient route for themselves. Now, this is when we connect. I mean, we'd been friends the whole time, but we reconnected, and she was like, hey, I think something's going on here. There are no crowdsourced mapping tools in the market. And I was like, what? It's 2020. How can that be, right? Like, that seems like such a no-brainer of a solution. So we end up researching it more, discovering that is true. There are no crowdsourceable mapping tools in the market. We end up going to market with a MVP of a crowdsource mapping tool. And then more and more people found that online, and they kept, requesting features. And long story short, now we're technology that allows individuals and businesses to create branded, customizable, embeddable maps that you get analytics back on.
Wow. Wow.
And so, during that process, I ended up selling my other business. She ends up quitting her PhD or putting it on hold. And we raised venture money, and here we are. And now we have 4 employees and a handful of contractors, and we're actually growing really quickly. So
That
it's
is
been a
so
wild few
wow.
years.
Wow, that is so awesome. I love that story. That is so inspirational. And you left some big companies,
Yeah.
Boeing, Microsoft. What was that like to really bet on yourself? And what was there a tipping point that you told yourself that, okay, I'm kind of done. I'm gonna just bet on myself? Because it sounds like things were going well at both the other companies.
Yeah, really. I really enjoyed working for those companies and Microsoft especially. But um, I think, well, I had purchased that home services business, and there was no two ways around it. I had to spend time running it. I mean, that I just had to go do it. And
Mhm.
I had always thought that one day I would work my way into entrepreneurship. I didn't see it coming so quickly. I'm
Mhm.
a pretty risk averse person. And so I had wanted to have even more of a landing pad before leaving corporate, even though I could have done it before.
Right.
But yeah, so it was kind of like a forcing function. But once I did it, I would definitely go back to those companies. But I love building businesses.
Yeah.
It's just my passion. It's what I really enjoy doing.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And let me ask this because there's going to be a lot of people that'll hear this that might be in that same place as you and in somewhere that they really like to be at. They're comfortable, but yet they have that itch, to want to build their own business. What would you say is one or two things that working in the corporate world that you took away that
Oh,
you're using now? And maybe one or two things that what happened in the corporate world and you said, you know what, that's staying there. I'm not taking that with me.
okay. Great question. I think about this often. I don't think that I could be a good entrepreneur without my time in the corporate world. I think that my time, it was time well spent at those companies. Um, because I had to learn a lot of lessons. The first one was efficiency. When you are in a corporation, especially ones like Microsoft and Boeing, you have to operate at scale with everything that you do, and everything has to be efficient. And I think that when you go into a startup, if you haven't done it before, everything seems important. Everything seems like you need to touch it. But really that background in corporate has given me that understanding of what do I really need to do to be efficient here, and what do I need to prioritize for the highest ROI on my time.
Mm,
And without that corporate experience, there's no way I could be as efficient as I am currently.
mm,
The other thing that I learned in corporations was all about fiduciary responsibility. And, that's partially my background in finance, but
yeah, yes.
it's really understanding cash flow, understanding fiduciary responsibility, like, how you spend your money, like it better be on the thing that produces the highest return on that investment. And so I think if you don't have those experiences, understanding cash flow, understanding financial statements, it would be difficult to
Mm,
run your own company.
yeah,
You would have to just go get that education at some point, but it was nice to already have it.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and then something I would leave behind is the the um oh gosh, two things. The politics of corporate, there's always like
yeah.
you come from that, there's some sort of posturing that happens in a corporation, and I really dislike that. I think people would tell you that I'm the same person inside and outside of work. And I really couldn't stand, people posturing at work. And that's something that I don't do in my own business. And I encourage everyone else not to do. Like, hey, you don't have to prove yourself. Like, your results will stand on their own. Like,
Absolutely.
I just can't. That posturing was crazy to me. Um, and the other thing was doing things that um, are not a waste of time, because in corporate you kind of have to do these things, but there's just so many things that take your time away from deep work.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
administrative tasks, reporting, uh, all of those little things. And in my own companies, I try to have people veer away from these minutia tasks and really concentrate on things that will move the ball forward.
Wow. That's fantastic, and I loved your first two answers on what you took, and I love those two answers also. What to left behind, what to leave behind. Um, I want to focus a little bit on you again because one of the things as I was looking at your background that became really apparent to me, and it's validated just for these few minutes we've been speaking, is you have a very intentional, specific brand, personal brand
Mm.
that is really reflected in your company. And so I got to tell you, I'll ask leaders all the time, "Hey, what do you stand for, man? What do you say?" I don't know, man. I just work hard. They really have a tough time in building their own personal brand. What would be a couple of pieces of advice that you would give some leaders out there that are struggling with really building their personal brand? And before you
Mhm.
answer that, talk a little bit about what you did to build yours.
Yeah, thank you for that compliment. It's funny that you compliment that, because that's an area I actually feel weak in. Uh, so that's so funny. I think something that I work on, well, twofold. One is trying to be authentic. And I mentioned that a moment ago. I'm the same person inside and outside of work. This is me. I don't try to be someone who I'm not. And I think that really helps with personal brand. If you see content out there from me, it's really from my heart. I'm not trying to just push things out there. Like I really feel passionate about what I'm talking about. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that I've been working toward demonstrating industry and leadership expertise,
Mm,
if that makes sense.
mhm, mhm,
I think it's easy for anyone in a leadership position to feel somewhat like an imposter. And I try to drive those feelings out, and I've been working more on showing the things that I really know and I feel confident in.
mhm, mhm,
Um,
mhm.
yeah. And then what was the second part to that question?
Yeah, you probably already answered it because
Yeah.
I think that's also great advice,
Yeah.
right? Really just keeping it real because if I was to before I even got to speak to you, if someone asked me, "Hey, so tell me a little bit about this person you're talking about today,"
Yeah.
I would have said, "There's a grind there." I could just see the grind. I could see the hard work. And but also there just seems to be this authenticity, to this person that is kind of excuse the expression, there's no BS, and you said that of one of the things that you wanted to leave behind in the corporate world. And so I think that it sounds like it's been very intentional. It sounds like it's a day in, day out thing. This is a question I was going to ask at the end, but I want to ask it now because I love how you said that's something you're still working at. How do you develop yourself? Is it a daily thing? Is it a weekly
Yeah.
thing? What are some things that you're very intentional about in developing yourself?
I work on getting better as a human, both professionally and personally, as much as I can. I'm probably a little bit of a weirdo because almost all of my free time is spent on development almost.
Ah, okay.
I love, but it's fun it's just fun. Like I don't really see it as work or a problem. Like I really enjoy like while I'm taking a run, I'll be listening to podcasts that are about business or the latest trends in this or that, or maybe like Brene Brown's podcast,
Yeah,
how to be a better leader or something like this.
yeah,
um so I'd say like it's very intentional, it takes a lot of time, but over time I've really come to enjoy it. So it's all about like just taking in as much knowledge as I can. So that might be through podcasts, that might be through news articles, that might be through reading fiction or nonfiction. Uh, just a big consumer of information.
yeah. I love that. And not once did you say, you know what, I don't have the time to do that, which is what
Yeah.
I find from a lot of leaders that I'm like, yeah, Kenny, I don't have the time. But as busy as you are running a company, look at you. You're just like,
Oh no, you have to. I think,
yeah,
you know, something I talk to a lot of people I'm close to about is prioritization of your day. I only prioritize a couple of things in my day, in the workday specifically. And if those things are done, I feel really good. And I don't get caught up in what are a million other things I could do because I chose the best two things or three maybe.
yeah,
And that allows me to book other things into my schedule that make me a better person
yeah, yeah,
because I know I've moved the ball significantly forward every day and everything else kind of just doesn't matter.
yeah. Wow.
And then you can spend the time doing other things. And people really, and I'm not, I do receive feedback on occasion that I could get into the minutia a little bit more,
Hmm.
you know, whatever, looking at more detail, like answering every single email, things like that. But I just don't, if I'm being honest, I think, if you accomplish those things that move the business forward, then really everything else is secondary. So
Yeah.
that's my strategy, but right or wrong.
It's 100% right. I love it. because and I think that's where a lot of people get overwhelmed, right? Where, my priority list is 10, 15, 20 different things. You ain't going to get it done, man. Come on.
Yeah,
You know,
just don't worry.
yeah, you're not going to get it done. I love that. And so you mentioned this, so let me go there about a lot of the research that you've done on what would you say would be, because you talk a lot about social media trends, and you've really immersed yourself
Mhm.
in figuring out that and cracking some codes there. What are some social media trends that you're seeing in 2023?
Well, I think we've two things, and I think we've all heard them, but video seems to be the name of the game. So I'm working on creating some TikTok presence for our company, which is, feels very unnatural, but that's okay. Learning,
Yes,
working through it,
yes.
creating video content otherwise for our company on other channels as well is super important. And then the other thing in social that I find works really well is templating. So in words over photo and video.
Hmm. Okay.
Because people at work don't have their sound on and they don't want to spend a lot of time like uh uh I guess reading through a super long descript gosh, what's that? Like description or whatever. So
Mm.
words over video and photos and having it look really consistent over time in whatever feed you're working in social. I think there are other trends, but those are the two most tactical, highest performing trends that we're working on right now.
Okay. That's awesome. And you're hitting some learning styles there too, right? The auditory
Yeah,
learner, the visual learner. You're
that's
hitting
true.
a few on there. That's fantastic. All right, here's probably going to be my last question, although I could talk to you for probably about the next 3 hours. Um, you right now lead a team of five, if I remember right.
Yeah.
What are a couple of Chelsea keys to actually building a team? What are some things that are non-negotiable to you that you've used several times in building a team that work? And I'm sure it evolves over time and with different teams as
Hmm.
well. But what would be your advice on a couple of really keys to building a successful team?
Yeah, two things I look for are integrity of is someone going to do what they say they're going to do? Is what they're telling me what I perceive to be true? um can I trust them to work when I'm not micromanaging them? I think that has really paid off
Yeah.
on a lot of hires.
Wow.
um the other thing is a demonstrated history of success in some way. It doesn't necessarily have to be success in the exact position that I'm hiring them in for, but can they speak with conviction and passion about an accomplishment or several that they've had, um, in a way that I know it's true, if that makes sense. Like I knew they drove those results,
Yeah.
and I know that then they can, if they're passionate about what they're working on for me, I know that will come through in their work.
Yeah. Wow. That tied right in with integrity for sure, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. I love it. Love it. All right, I fibbed. One last question.
Uh-huh.
Uh, do you have any role models?
Yeah, I think like very public role models include people like Brene Brown, like I mentioned before, a woman in marketing who owns her own business, Jenna Kutcher. I really admire her. Uh, I do consume a lot of podcasts. I really love the guys over at My First Million, Sam and Sean. I think
Mm,
they're,
mhm.
go-getters. That's a lot of fun to listen to.
Yeah.
I think internal to my life and a little bit more personal, I've been lucky to have a series of people who have towed the line for me and who have made sure that I will be able to step into that next version of me.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that has happened a couple of significant times, differently. One was back in university. I had an advisor, and she, I don't know how to explain it. She just, we would talk every week, and she would just ask me what's going on, and she would encourage me to just go get it. Like, go get what I wanted to get, and then provide counsel on how to become a better, a better person to step into this role, whether it be like public speaking skills, or whether it be, how to manage up, or some things like this. And then secondly was one of my first jobs in the workplace at Boeing. I mentioned that I had like an all-female like team leading up kind of straight to the top, and I was lucky enough to have come in close contact with all of them. And these women inspired me because they expected excellence in your work, and they expected excellence in your speaking. And I didn't always nail it back when I was 22, and still not today, but they both expected that excellence, but gave you room to mess up, if that, without terrible repercussions. And so that support, combined with the challenges that were handed over,
Yes.
really allowed for some incredible growth early on. And I'm really thankful for those things.
Wow. That's awesome. Well, it is so apparent. I want to thank you first so much for being so generous with your time today, and with all of walking through your background, but all of the little nuggets that you dropped for us were just phenomenal. So thank you so much for that. And I want to talk to you again. So I'm hoping if I reach out again that maybe we can connect maybe a couple months down the road, and we can chat a little bit more again, because I think we just kind of scratched the surface. I love what you're doing. God bless that you're having the success that you're having in the space that you're in right now. And I think you've just scratched the surface. And so I'd love to stay close on that journey with you. And so thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Kenny. Really enjoyed talking to you.
Oh, thank you. Well, folks, we're going to leave it there. Please share this. This has been Kenny and Chelsey. This has been the Leading from the Middle podcast, and we will talk to you real soon.